Greetings of light. Welcome everyone. This is the November-December AGP 2023. It's wonderful to see everyone here. Great to hang out together again. As we get started, I would suggest settling in, relaxing, getting into a meditative state, and really putting away everything else that could be a potential distraction. Start tuning in to this group energy, the group intention. So that you get the most benefit. It's nice to be able to step back and reflect from time to time on this human incarnation. At one point, when we transition and leave this physical body, we do actually, all of us, have this more comprehensive look at the life we've led until that point of transition. And we realize many ironies where from the other side we can see some things we thought were important and we thought were worthy of praise, worthy of recognition. Those things turn out to be not such a big deal. And many things that we simply took for granted, didn't pay attention, didn't give value to, those things look very important. And I think the more we can have that perspective while we're still in the body, the more there's opportunity to correct and focus on what's important. And a lot of the things which we sweat about, we can readily let it go. It's a lot easier to let go when you have the right perspective. And, these meetings are yet another reminder of those things that are important. We tend to focus on activities here. The typical human being is quite caught up in activities. And the unstated assumption is if I engage in the right activities, that's what a good life looks like. And there is less emphasis, if any, on who it is that is engaging in those activities. And when I say who it is, I mean what is the person's intention? What is their energetic state? What is their sense of connection with the whole? What is their level of consciousness? All these things we bring to any activity. And the activity itself is not as significant as all these things I just mentioned. And we tend to hardly pay attention to these things. What is our presence in any given moment? What is the consciousness? How expansive is it? How inclusive is it? How balanced is it? So even if the activity is very mundane, maybe we're having a meal, nothing big is happening from an activity perspective, but all these things can make a big difference. And even if the activity is something we consider very important, same thing. The activity in the end is not a big deal. It's who's doing it. And so you can apply that to every little thing. How we relate to people, how we relate to objects, things, how we relate to circumstances, how we relate to ourselves. It looks very different when our vibration is higher. We have a more open, expansive state. And we inherently have an intention that let this be for the good of all. That comes naturally when you feel one with the whole and when you're not isolated and disconnected. Even an activity that you might consider spiritual, that we might say, oh, that's, makes me more spiritual, that's obviously a higher activity. Even if you consider something like meditating, these things matter a lot. The most important thing about the meditation is not the technique, it's who is meditating. That makes all the difference. If you are sitting there as an infinite being, knowing your infiniteness, and you happen to be meditating, that meditation is going to be very profound and it's going to have a lot of impact, a lot of positive impact for many. On the other hand, you can be very tight and small and focused and very intense and thinking, I have a great technique, I have a great path I'm on, and I'm going to really meditate hard and I'm going to really make some good progress. All that tightness and smallness actually it diminishes the impact. So even spiritual activities, we want to be very careful. It's not the activity, it's who's doing it. So this becomes more and more apparent, of course, when we depart from here. And within no time, when we're in the non-physical, it's just instantly obvious where our heart was at, and where our mind was at, and where our consciousness was at throughout the life. Even if you lived, let's say, 100 years, a good life, a good, solid, long life, those 100 years, you can, in 5 minutes, you can see where this person was at. Turns out. It may seem like a long time, 100 years, but in no time, you can condense it down to where the heart was, where the mind was, where the consciousness was. And so these things become very significant, as opposed to anything that's on our resume, right? Where we tend to emphasize, the incredible achievements I made at XYZ, and then, various positions I've held, various accolades and achievements and all these kinds of things. That's on the professional side. But you can also look at that same kind of thing on your personal resume, if you will. All the people you've known, how you've been with them, whatever you think you did, and did well in those, they all are the wrapping. And they don't necessarily directly mean anything. You have to see what's inside. And when you take out the wrapping, then you can see where was this person living from? What was the vibration that was there throughout their life? And that is by far the most critical thing that stands out when you look back. And so all these things, of course, they're no secret, but most human beings live as if this is irrelevant. They're living as if none of this matters. So it's almost like it becomes like a secret that could be a surprise for somebody when they pass on. And it doesn't have to be at all. In fact, for us here, we know this at various levels. And of course, we've got to live it. Just knowing it theoretically is not terribly useful. You got to live it. And without stressing, without clenching your teeth, without getting all worked up. Because we have such a strong type A orientation towards anything. You just give somebody something, they're gonna get all they get all worked up. Gotta achieve, gotta be getting A+. And we gotta really relax from that kind of way of being. Here there's no competition. You're just competing against yourself. So constantly get in touch with yourself. Notice what are your true deep intentions. I'm sure all of us are have good intentions, but keep looking deeper, because these good intentions can be purer and clearer. Similarly, develop your awareness so that you are much more in touch with your own consciousness. Where is your consciousness you know, is it, where is your consciousness? Is it in tune with the infinite nature of your being? Is it aligned with your infinite nature? Is it constantly in touch? And all this is not mental, right? None of this is like you got to be thinking about this all the time. That's just thinking about it all the time. What we really are looking for is the actual thing, not the thinking about it. Big difference. And this is a common thing we're very confused about. We are so lost in thinking that we think that's the thing. For example, if I just think about doing dishes, it doesn't mean the dishes get done. The actual doing the dishes is the thing. And even while doing the dishes, I can do the dishes without be constantly thinking I'm doing the dishes. I can just do the dishes with no mental activity. So everything you can look like that, look from that point of view. It's not the thing itself or thinking about the thing, it's being. It's really being, as opposed to thinking or doing and being caught up in the doing. And of course, when we listen to things like near-death experiences, you hear real people talking about what happened when they crossed over. Of course, they came back. But you can still get a sense of the dramatically different perspective that exists in non-physical realities. And the beauty is, if you've been meditating consistently and going beyond the physical, and what I mean by going beyond the physical is that nothing in the physical world is grabbing you as you're sitting and meditating. If nothing in the physical world is grabbing you, then your consciousness is floating in some non-physical reality. And if you've had many of those, you already have a sense of what it's like to have no body, where the body is no longer attached to you, associated with you, and you're freely floating as a being of energy and being of light. And so you would already have glimpses of this bigger perspective, which is really very important to have that direct experience. Otherwise, it's just book knowledge. But these actual experiences of expansiveness, which we've all felt, those are very important because they give us that direct glimpse. And the more we can take that perspective and bring it to the physical world, then it's very useful, because even when you're in the physical world, you're not caught up in it. You constantly have this higher perspective, higher vision that is actually driving you, that is guiding you. And then your life is very different, actually. All the things I started with, pure intention, higher vibration, higher level of consciousness, all these come with that. If internally you stay in this higher state of consciousness. So, and that does not have to be limited to meditation. In fact, meditation is just the beginning of getting a real taste for higher consciousness. And hopefully the higher consciousness is not limited to only the times you meditate. It's actually the rest of the time, which is the bulk of the time, you want that higher consciousness to be operating through you. That is the life we want to lead. So if any of that triggers some discussion or thoughts, we'll certainly get to that after our meditation. So as we keep all that in mind and enter into the meditation, let's remember a few things. Firstly, this meditation is especially significant because we are gathered together with this common intention for the highest truth, nothing less. And throughout the meditation, we are in the light. So no matter where you're joining in from, we are sitting together under this bright light of the cosmic sun. And simply just that reminder, you can, and opening up to that, you will find yourself flooded with light. Just like that. So throughout the meditation, instead of thinking you had to do something, think of it as staying open, receptive, relaxed to this light, which brings with it truth. It brings clarity. It brings higher consciousness. So in a sense, all you have to do is stay open, stay relaxed. That's the most important thing. So what we're going to do now is do the air practice. As usual, I'll set the timer for 20 minutes. You'll hear a bell every 5 minutes indicating it's time to go to the next technique. And after 20 minutes, I'll be back and we'll have the guided meditation. So let me get the timer going. Notice the connection you feel with the whole group and with the deepest aspect of your own being. As you keep your eyes closed, we'll now begin the guided meditation. I suggest lifting your gaze even with the eyes closed, because when you lift the gaze, you more naturally gravitate towards superconscious states, and you're more naturally going to avoid all the ordinary subconscious driven thoughts. So keep the gaze very gently and easily. If somebody sees your face, it shouldn't look like you're straining. It should look very relaxed. So gaze up just a little bit. Doesn't have to be all the way up. And make sure you're fully relaxed. You could be sitting, it's fine if you want to lie down. And more than anything, connect internally at the level of the vibration. More important than the words are this vibration we're sharing, the consciousness we're sharing. Imagine yourself on a beautiful, serene ocean. You're in the middle of an ocean. The water is a deep, calming shade of blue. Very soothing, stretching out to the horizon in all directions. Feel into that space all around you, stretching out as far as the eye can see. And you are on a safe, comfortable boat. And this boat represents the highest teachings. It's the path you are on in your journey of growth. And it's going to keep you protected, safe. As you sail on this ocean of infinity. You can feel the gentle motion of the boat as it's effortlessly gliding across the water. Your growth can be gentle, easy, just like the boat's movement on the water. It can feel very enjoyable. As you look above, you can see the sky. The sky is clear, and even there you can see forever, in all directions, open sky. The space in all directions, and there is unlimited time. There is no time actually. Here in this peaceful, expansive environment, there is no sense of time. There's as much time as you need. In fact, nobody's keeping track of time, so there is no time. Just enjoy this feeling. Smooth, easy sailing on a vast, endless ocean. Allow yourself to completely relax. Any thoughts floating by, just let them go. Don't be bothered by anything that pops up. All that is in the distant past. Right now, you are gently gliding over this ocean surface. So just enjoy that. Now, envision yourself taking a dip in the ocean. In this ocean, you don't have to be concerned, even if you don't know swimming. You can't drown in this ocean, so you just have to step into the ocean, step off the boat into the water, and even if you don't do anything, you will be floating. So you can enter the water and just lie on your back floating on your back, and you're looking up. And the water supports you so that you're floating effortlessly. It's like you're weightless. So you can completely relax and you'll be like a cork. You'll be floating on the surface. So just enjoy lying on your back and looking up. You're gazing up at the infinity of the sky. The vastness it's like the endless possibilities, the infinite possibilities that are available. It's reminiscent of that. And you're floating on this ocean, and this is the ocean of consciousness itself. It's very deep, very wise. It's eternal, beyond time. You're floating on this ocean of consciousness, and you are part of it. You're a conscious being, and you derive your consciousness from this ocean. Again, enjoy this effortless floating. Feeling completely supported and part of something much, much bigger. Let the boundaries of who you think of yourself to be, which is oftentimes the body itself, let those boundaries relax. Let your body not be the container that seems to contain you. Instead, let your own consciousness go beyond the body. Now, as you gaze upwards at the sky, you notice the sun, a brilliant source of light. And this is the central sun, the cosmic sun, source of light energy of the highest frequencies. Feel the warm light from the sun. It's bathing you, and it's lighting up the truth within you. The truth becomes enlivened and much more evident and obvious under this brilliant light. Allow yourself, open yourself to receive the light and the truth that it illuminates, because it is very simple to see the truth. As the sunlight touches you, every cell of your body is illuminated. Your body is healed, restored, revitalized, so that it is in alignment with the original blueprint from which it was created. Again, simply receive and allow for it. There's no need to understand it. There's no need to think about it. Simply let it be. All this is transpiring without effort. So simply relax. Let your consciousness feel the infinitude in every direction, in every dimension. Because this setting is not just in the physical reality. Every aspect of this setting is taking you from physical to higher and higher dimensions of energy, light, and consciousness. So what is transpiring is happening in multiple dimensions. So open yourself to that. Your sense of self has already expanded so much. It's gone well beyond the boundaries of the physical body. But let it keep going without limit. Allow your sense of self to merge with infinity. This ocean of infinity. Let yourself expand so that you are merging with all the infinities that you are being held by. The infinity of the ocean, the infinity of the sky, and the infinity of the light from the cosmic sun. These infinities all are beckoning you to join them, to come into their embrace. Let yourself merge, dissolve into this incredible vastness. Realize that you are not separate from any of these infinities. You are part of them, and they are part of you. There was never a separation. It was only an artificial separation. And now that artificial separation is being released because it was artificial, and the time has come for truth to make itself known within your consciousness. And so simply by relaxing and allowing, you can return to this seamless, indivisible infinity. You are this infinity experiencing itself. Let this realization fill you with the profound sense of unity and the peace and the love and the connection that comes with that. Let's spend a few minutes in total silence, really fully enjoying and deepening this recognition of our unity with infinity. in these beautiful, expansive states, it's like one can stay there indefinitely. Because there is no time. And you can taste that deep sense of peace, that there is absolutely nothing that can take away the truth of what truly is. And that there's ultimately nothing to be concerned or worried about. Because this truth is always, always going to be there. And now, let's slowly come back to the boat. We've been floating on this ocean. Let's gently paddle back to the boat. As you come back to the boat and sit, you're also getting back in touch with your body as well. Even as you sit on the boat, you can enjoy the expansiveness all around you. And you can integrate it. Integrate this recognition of your infinite nature into this physicality that you find yourself in. You can also reflect on your profound experience. You could ponder about it. You can now understand the meaning of the word unity. And you can understand infinity in a whole different way, having gone so deep so as to dissolve all boundaries. So gently bring yourself back and take a few deep breaths. And you're welcome to stay in the meditative state as we continue here. At this point, we'll take a short break. Let's take a 4-minute break. It's a good time to stretch. Good time to drink some water. But stay away from gadgets, devices, social media. They can wait. No need to rush. So, see you all back in 4 minutes. Welcome back. So I'd like to open it up and see if anyone would like to share, reflect about their experience with the meditation, anything that came up that you feel like sharing. And be sure to unmute yourself before you speak.
Hi, Suresh. Siddharth here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the guided experience. So initially, I could see myself going into the subtler subconscious world where there was, where we discussed last time, we were more toys to play with compared to physical toys, subtle toys started coming up.
Yeah.
So there was literally a game there
Right.
where I was playing. Then I think you had left a key open where I could still listen to you in some way, where you were there, and when it was time for you to play, you said no. So that time I remembered, okay, no, I'm with Suresh Ji here, so I kind of could give up the toys at that point for a brief moment, which pulled me a little deeper. And then I could, while being there, I could still follow your instructions. It was the first time I could do that since many these sessions. And then when you mentioned the cosmic sun, it was very different. I never thought this is what. So till now, I was trying to project my way out of all this. Like I was attempting to create my own world and project myself out, but this time it was just what you said: cosmic sun above your head. Like above, like
Yeah.
straight above. So there was almost like a directionless but an upward attempt to just rise. So then the warmth started settling. So this warmth was very nice. It was gentle, and I couldn't see the sun of sorts, but I knew that there was some brightness. And last point is when you mentioned just merge with the reality, or I don't know what word you use, but I could see there was this subtler borders that was there all through all this. I was enjoying even the sun, but I felt there was still this individual. And then this merging was almost like, after you make a painting, when the paint is still wet, you just smudge it and merge it off like that, like along the other side. So it was really interesting. And yes, it was a solid merge. I mean, not merge, but solid, kind of like a stable feel to it. So yeah, thank you so much.
Good to hear. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah. There's going to be various variations each one of us will experience. And yeah, each one of them is just what it should be. Earlier on I was talking about the non-physical realities that you experience post-transition, meaning once you leave this physical body. And it's it's a lot like this meditation in the sense that the infinity opens up, but it's up to us how far we want to go into that. So for some people, they basically want to preserve the structures that they are so familiar with on the life they just led. They're still craving for pizza. They're still thinking about traffic, these kinds of earthly things. And you can kind of conjure up the equivalent of these things in the non-physical. And you can engage with that indefinitely, actually. And, what Siddhartha was saying, you can have, various kinds of toys, effectively, that you can play with as long as you want. And, of course, we may or may not realize that there's infinity is one option, and then there's all these other miscellaneous toys. And when you truly understand what is here, then there is no choice. The question of choice doesn't arise. Infinity is the only thing. It includes everything. It includes everything, and it's all fulfilling. So it's really irresistible. Once you are ripe and wise, that's the only choice that you want to go towards. Okay. Anybody else who wants to share?
Yes, I'd like to share and the question.
Sure. Go ahead, Tamatsu.
During the meditation, I was fading, dissolving into more and more into the subtleties, and it felt there was a pop or a bubble of insight where it very much felt profound, and I actually wanted to go towards that profoundness, but another part of me said, don't, pulled me away from that, because I didn't want to run after this subtlety that felt very profound.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was happening, I was able to cognize what it was. But soon after, just like waking up from a dream, it's disappeared. So I don't know what that profundity was. I don't know what it is anymore. And so the question is, when these things come up, is it something to let go of, or should I kind of follow that breadcrumb? So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So, when we go really deep, there's some very, very subtle, profound possibilities. And the more we are clear, and this is a different kind of clarity. It's not just like, me saying a sentence, yeah, this is what I want, and that's okay. But at a very deep level, knowing, really being like a heat-seeking missile, where there's only one thing you're seeking, that is truth with a capital T. Being, having that like literally oozing out of you, that when we bring to any super subtle plane, we will naturally do the right thing. Okay. And in general, I would say, what is the right thing? Usually when we go to subtle and subtler planes, those subtleties are like so like delicate and tasty. We want to like hang out there and just admire and appreciate. That's such subtle. It's a sense of being. It's a sense of beauty. It's very hard to describe it even, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's just some very profound subtlety. So we realize this is way subtler than my usual sort of reality that I'm hang out in. So this super subtle, we want to just keep tasting it. But the trick is, we generally want to recognize that this thing is way subtler than I'm used to, but it's not the ultimate truth. And the ultimate truth is even further along into, even subtler realms. And I'm going to keep going there. So this kind of instruction, you can't actually memorize it and do it. Doesn't work like that. It has to be ingrained. It has to be internalized so that when it actually happens, you are going to have that discernment. And it's not a mental activity. It's just like, it's really profound wisdom to say, this subtlety is great, but I'm going to keep moving here. I'm going to keep moving towards infinity and all the way to the full fading away, the full dissolution. Keep going that way. So that's the general thing. But yeah, it's very hard to... In fact, anytime you have a profound meditation, you may come back and you might want to think about it or even try to recreate it. It's very, very hard, even to yourself. It's hard to describe it. But you have this qualitative, the subjective sense of that moment. And that's all you have. You can't really describe it to anybody and even to yourself. But there is this texture and quality that remains with you. And the beauty is, these things are always there. So we can always go back not only to this guided meditation, but it's in our consciousness, and that's the key. You don't even need the guided meditation. You can go to these places. Again, places and all these are all metaphors, but you know what I mean. You can go there, and you can go there and beyond. Yeah, great, good question, good sharing. Anybody else who wants to comment or ask something or simply share?
Suresh, I have a follow-up question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Vignesh.
A very simple one, like, for me, I'm just starting in the spiritual path. I'm at this point, it's more about feeling better, getting a grip of myself, my emotions and whatnot. So when you say, when you talk about seeking the truth, like a heat-seeking missile, or like having that real, destined urge to be with infinity. How does one get there? Is it through practice of meditation? Does your consciousness refine? So at some point you are ready to not just enjoy the subtle states, and you reach a point where you go beyond that. Is that how we approach this?
Right. Yeah, good question, because I'm more inclined to go to those more extreme aspirations, if you will. But yeah, I think for a lot of us, we may be seeking more either comfort or simply feeling more happy and fulfilled, more well adjusted to operating in this reality. And that's perfectly fine. It gradually develops, because as we live, and we live with awareness, then we naturally start seeing certain things we wanted, they come to pass. Certain other things, they don't. And in that process, we start realizing that there's something I'm missing in just the way I'm thinking and operating. And then you actually naturally shift to the next level, which is whatever that is, from wherever you're at to the next level. So this process keeps on going, actually, for really decades and lifetimes. And it starts culminating when one feels sort of dissatisfied with everything. It's everything that you see around, you feel dissatisfied. And in fact, you get to a point where even if somebody comes and says, oh, there's this great anything, there's this great restaurant or great movie or great book or great relationship or great travel destination or great vacation or great whatever, you don't even have to experience it. You already know it's not going to fulfill you. It's not a matter of being like depressed or feeling very pessimistic. It's nothing to do with pessimism or anything. Your inner wisdom says, even if I get this, it's not going to satisfy me. And then that is not actually anything to feel bad about. It means something in you is now looking for something deeper, truer, higher. And you'll start seeking that. So this goes on and on, until you realize that nothing but the highest is what I want. Because I've tried a lot of other stuff, it doesn't work. So that process has to play out to some extent. So you just have to live with awareness and see your natural wisdom, whatever it tells you, go with that. The other thing you can do is you can hang out with people like this group, where there's more likely to be more people who are, at some stage where they are already seeking something higher or the highest. And that also has an effect, because it rubs off on you and you pick up something, and you're more likely to get there much sooner. So your inner wisdom can recognize truths earlier and earlier. You don't have to go through a lot of experiences and then you understand, oh, I get it now. Instead, you just need a little bit of experience and you get a lot of wisdom, which is really how it should be. So hang out with the right people is one other way to speed things up. And of course, regular deep meditation certainly is a piece of that.
Wonderful, Suresh. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Suresh,
Yeah.
I've been noticing lately more and more that I'm going to say slip into, but I'm not sure, into a sort of a kind of a meditative state when I'm awake and doing things, and like driving or, but it's not dangerous. I feel as though I'm almost watching myself driving sometimes, but I don't feel that it's dangerous, and I'm very aware of the light, and I don't know, but it happens quite a bit, and it affects how I approach people in shops and things. Like I see them as it sounds awful. It's like I approach people differently, and I see everything differently and more human, if is that the word? Like I'll really take the time to stop and chat and be with somebody and recognize them as a being. Is that making any sense? Is it anything you can relate to or talk about? Or is that just complete rubbish?
Right. Yeah, actually, well, there's a couple of things I'm hearing. One is this meditative state when you're not necessarily sitting and meditating. And that I would say, yeah, that's great, because that meditative state it's not expected to be only in some deep meditation. In fact, it's supposed to leak out into the day-to-day life. So as long as we're not zoning out or some strange thing where you're losing touch with this physical reality, right? That's not what I mean by meditative state. Meditative state that I am talking about is you're engaged, alert on this level. At the same time, the backdrop, you have this expansive state where you are not necessarily just thinking, I am so and so. You are like, I'm a being, I am undefined. You're more like that internally, and then you're fully here. So that's the way that it should go, in a sense. So you bring higher consciousness basically to day-to-day life. That's one
what
piece
it
of it.
feels like.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And then in terms of people, connecting with people, you will definitely start seeing people differently. And that'll be a range of things. You, first of all, may feel very connected as a fellow human, and a good feeling of connection and empathy and compassion, that here we are, both of us were on the same boat here, and life's happening, and our lives look different, but really in some ways they're all the same. So we have this sense of connection with all human beings we meet, and there's that aspect. But then there's also another aspect where you can also see that this person appears like this, but they are way more than that. Their essence is something completely far beyond what they look like. And that's a natural observation coming out of our own inner experience with ourselves, because we look a certain way in the mirror, but boy, we are far more than what appears on the mirror. We are this just so incredibly magnificent beings. We just look like this person. So we've kind of seen that with ourselves. We naturally start seeing that a little bit more with other people, whether they're spiritual or not. This has nothing to do with, them talking in a certain way or talking about yoga and meditation or any such thing. This could be just like an ordinary person. So, yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
there's...
it's definitely like, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's definitely like that. Like people I know, but people I don't know even more. Like, and people that sort of, you might say, incidental in your life, like walk past while I'm painting the fence, or that serve me in a shop or something, and just kind of, I don't know, it's a recognition that they're a being too, and so I find myself being different towards them. Sounds really strange, rather than just buying what I'm buying and off I go. I'll take the time to say, hey, have a good day, and thanks for doing that, and just spend that moment with that sort of eye contact and smile. Not that I never used to, but it's different.
Right. It's more genuine. It's coming from a deeper place. And it's
more frequent.
More frequent.
It's like I'm constantly aware of it.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Without thinking it, without intellectualizing it. You just sort of like, wow, this person's serving me, thank you. This is great.
Right.
And we're all here doing it,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it is like you said, with people we don't really know, we are less likely to go into preconceived ideas and judgments based on past experiences, because we haven't had any past experience with this person, so we have a fresher take, and we are more likely to see them more than just what they appear to be. So that's
an interesting point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Suresh, this is Ravi.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Can you hear?
Yes.
You mentioned about maybe the first sign or a turnaround is that one starts to realize that nothing really, is going to satisfy me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in that. Hello?
Yeah.
And I have been in that state, and I have been wondering as to all about the past story of productiveness and efficiency and all that. And then I let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, it's a feeling of quietness. But sometimes I'm also saying to myself, wow, I'm 75, 76 years old. What about those people who get this earlier? And, I'm kind of saying maybe it is better that I got this later.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I don't know what it means. So I wanted to share that.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point. There are many sort of recalibrations, I would call it, which happen along the way, because we are typically moving forward with a certain set of understandings, and then some of those understandings are shaken up, and now we have to move forward, but it's a different set of understandings. So let's say if I was motivated and very ambitious in a certain way from a place of personal identity, and then that identity dissolves let's say a big chunk of it dissolves, then I may find that the ambition I had, suddenly a lot of it is gone. I just don't have the same drive, no same passion, same energy, and it may feel like as if something was lost, and you may feel a little confused, disoriented. This is typical, very typical, and it's going to happen many times actually. Because each time there's a significant shift, there's a sense of the old motivations don't quite work. So now it's like, does that mean I just sleep all day? Is what you feel. But in fact, that's not the case. You really rediscover a whole new set of motivations, drivers, which are coming from a more expansive place. It's coming from a broader understanding, and it's coming more from, you could say, a higher wisdom, higher consciousness. And then we move forward with that set of understanding for perhaps many years. And then another shift happens. And then again we feel lost. We feel confused. This is going to happen, like, even if somebody starts early, let's say whatever is early, let's say even their 20s, they're going to bump into this again and again and again and have to rediscover what life means and what it means to keep moving forward and what a meaningful life looks like. So all these things, they just keep happening. And you realize that at some point you've left the world far behind, because the world is still coming from a very crude set of motivations. And you feel like, okay, I remember a million years back that I was like that, but that's not the reality I live in. So, but there's purer drivers, and they correspond to the level of consciousness. So every level of consciousness has its own set of, this is what makes me come alive, this is what makes me get up in the morning, and this is what I use to set my goals. All comes from the level of consciousness. We just think everybody else must be also thinking like that, but not at all. Everybody is thinking completely differently based on how big they are or how small they are.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Suresh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are just some thoughts to consider. And the thing is, of course, this journey continues across lifetimes. So, you pick up where you left off. So, we don't all start at the same place when we take birth. We're going to start wherever we were. So that's why somebody can be very young and very wise. And of course, vice versa. Any other thoughts or sharings before I look at some of the questions I have received? By the way, all these topics we discuss, two things I'd like to say. One is, feel free to jump in with your observations and your wisdom, because I think, we all bring many different perspectives, a lot of wisdom, and it can benefit all of us to hear many voices. That's one thing. What was the second thing? Yeah, I think it's along similar lines, because when we have a chance to share and bounce off some ideas, we essentially, it can have this ripple effect where something you shared might be just the thing that somebody else needs to hear. And here's the second thing I was really going to get to, which is oftentimes I talk about stuff which is the sort of the pinnacle, because to me that's the most important, most relevant, most valuable thing. But some of us may be wrestling with different things which are pretty real in our life, and we may want to be trying to connect the dots between, okay, this thing is going on in my life, and how do I see this, and how do I maybe work with it from this higher consciousness perspective. And so these kinds of things I encourage you to bring up, because that's going to actually help a lot of us, because we are all dealing with all kinds of things. We're not just dealing with the subtlest states of consciousness and the highest states of consciousness or anything. Sometimes we're like, man, there's something going on. It's just tough. So we want to weave those topics in as well. But I usually count on you to bring those up. If you leave it to me, I'm just going to talk about light or something like that. So feel free to bring up things that you feel are most relevant to you. Real life stuff. So, okay. So one of the questions that was, I think, posted on the AGP WhatsApp group is about guidance on how to live from the heart space. So let's take a look at that. And here again, I encourage everyone to jump in with what has worked for you, in terms of living from the heart space. There's a quote by Rumi who said, "If there is light in your heart, you will find your way home." If there is light in your heart, you will find your way home. It's quite beautiful. So that also reminds me of Neil Diamond and singing "Turn on your heart light," right? You'll remember that song, some of you. Turn on the heart light. So that's what we need to do. Turn on the heart light. Okay. Imagine there's that light in your heart and turn it on. And that will help you live from the heart space. It'll help you find your way home. Right? So instead of just thinking about it, let's right now take a moment to turn on that light and feel that light. Feel the warmth of that light. Feel the glow of that light. If it helps, you can place your hand on the heart. Simply doing that, it does something. It's like we feel the heart. We feel the heart just by placing our attention, softening. It's that simple. And we could do that anytime. And that's actually very important to do that many times during the day. So we return back to the heart simply because we have a tendency to keep going to the mind. So that's kind of part of the answer to this question is, get out of your mind. slow down the mind. And that's going to put you more likely where you can access the heart. So in terms of two specific things you can do, first of all, the mind, we keep feeding with we feed it with a lot of data in today's world. Whether you're watching TV or computer or your device or whatever, there's a lot of data. This data is going to always activate the mind and put it in some state where it's trying to cope, make sense of all this data. So first thing I would say is reduce this quantity of data. A lot of this data is not needed. We kind of fool ourselves. I need to know all the stuff. I need to know the news every 5 minutes. Not really. You don't. You got to get out of that mindset of I have to get all this data all the time. So consciously reduce. I think all of us can easily reduce it by 50% and you'll still be fine. Okay. So reduce the amount of data that you deal with every day. That's number one. Number two is whatever data that you do encounter, be very careful. Don't get dragged into it. In other words, don't feed the data. It's like, we don't even realize we're doing this, but there's a data stream and we start feeding it. We indulge in it. We engage with it. If you do that, you're going to be dragged. Your mind is going to be all wrapped up in whatever that content is. So avoid that. Be very, very selective on what data needs your attention. So even if you're looking at it, like, is this worthy of looking deeper? Is this worthy of thinking deeper? Don't just start thinking. Otherwise, you'll be thinking of all kinds of stuff. Make thinking a conscious engagement where you say, okay, this is an important thing. I do want to think about it, and go ahead and think about it. So in other words, it's got to be a little more deliberate. So that if you do those things, at least the mind will start slowing down. And that's going to make it such that there's less obstruction, if you will, to go to the heart. Okay. So instead of think, which is what we keep doing, instead of that, feel. Okay. Your entire day should be feel. And not so much thinking. Thinking should be very selective. Once in a while, you're like, I need to think about that one. Okay, you can sit and you can think about that. But mostly the default, let it be feel. And that's naturally coming from the place, from the heart space. Okay. So that's...
Suresh,
yeah.
I think that's what I'm experiencing out and about, is that living from a heart space. But okay, if you want an immediate challenge, I'm the people that are close to me, different people are going through some really different challenges, and I'm finding that overwhelming from a heart space. And
yes.
Actually, I'm going to go away for a few days shortly, and just, not that they're right at me, but I'm finding it difficult to load, to carry. And I know I shouldn't be carrying it. Like, that's not the intellectual, it's just there.
Yes.
Someone's having a lot of trouble at work. Someone had a car accident the other night. Someone's mother-in-law's got cancer, and I, for some reason, I'm feeling overwhelmed with it.
Sure. Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up, because that's what happens when you start going into the heart. It's too much. It's like, you feel like this is too much. And it's, part of it is compounded by our own previous experiences. So we've gone through many hurts and pains and traumas, difficult experiences, and some of that has left residues in our heart. So when there is a residue, what happens is whatever we feel from a current situation is either amplified or distorted by the residue. And so invariably, we've picked up some of these things along the way, and we feel, gosh, this is no fun. And so, in fact, that's one of the reasons we turn off the heart, because when we're growing up or whenever, at some point in life, it gets to be like just too much. We're like, wait a minute, there's an easy solution. I can stop feeling. And you turn off the heart and things are like a lot better. You're like, okay, this feels much better because I turned that off. And we've all done that to some degree. And, that is a coping mechanism, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But as our consciousness expands, things change. So, but it's not going to change instantly. So some of the things is, one is we start healing our existing wounds, which is very important. We're going to go back there, clean it up, forgive, let go, little by little. It's not an overnight thing. It could take a while, but it's okay. We keep doing that, which is very important, because now we can feel without that distorting influence of the past. So that is, I would call that more of a pure feeling. And this is going to slowly transition. So at any given point, what you're doing makes sense. If the feeling gets to be too much, take a break, do something that's going to cool things off, or go away somewhere, or whatever you need to do. So yes, that's a good point. But on the other hand, in the long run, you will find that you can feel more and more. And because you are seeing yourself more as an infinite being, your capacity to feel is going to go higher and higher and higher. So you can actually feel the entire pains of the world, which is a lot, and you can still be okay, because you have your consciousness is infinite capacity. But until we get there, we're slowly building that up. So it's going to be, sometimes it gets to be too much. We haven't built that capacity, so we adjust, and that's totally fair. You got to adjust. So feel, but if it gets too much, take a break, take it easy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. I mean, from childhood, I had, put the walls up.
Yeah.
And I've always been known as a person who doesn't cry, except maybe at a funeral, if it's someone close to me.
Yeah.
But now I just seem to cry a lot.
Yes.
And
things are changing.
I do feel as though the past stuff is largely resolved, but I'm not used to living in this heart space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a sudden thing. It's been coming, like I've been working in sort of spiritual development for 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And
right. So we do become more sensitive, and we start living from the heart, and even small things can make us feel like oh man, you feel like crying and breaking down, and it's like something you would have considered not a big deal, some years back. So that happens. And so along the spiritual journey, this is fairly common pattern that you find yourself crying a lot more, for all kinds of things. And in fact, movies, you cannot watch movies because the movies are extreme drama, actually. So it's like it feels terrible in your heart. It's like it's not enjoyable. It's because you are feeling everything, and they have amped it up a lot, right? Because to have impact. previously, when you're relatively insensitive, you can watch these movies and you're like, yeah, that was great. It is, you could handle it. But now you'll be first 5 minutes of the movie already crying, and it hasn't even gotten interesting. In fact, you realize it's not healthy to watch these movies because they are gonna mess you up because they're highly insensitive and not a healthy thing. So you naturally scale back on, I'm not gonna go pay money to feel miserable. So that kind of thing happens.
So then, can we do AGP again, like to have that support through this kind of process?
So yeah, AGP is something that's you can take again and again. It's not like a program you graduate from and that's it, you're out of here. There are people who've taken it many years and keep taking it. Yeah. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, whoever feels like it, they feel like this is valuable, yeah, absolutely. You can come back and sign up again and you're most welcome. There's, we don't like say January to June is the next sequence of AGP. It's not like we're going to repeat the same curriculum. So you're going to hear me the same thing, the same meditation, the same this and that. No, it's completely different. Meaning, the ultimate truths are the same. That's not going to change. But it's not like I'm going to replay the same old thing. It's always something new and fresh, just so that I don't fall asleep. So, yeah, it'll be new and interesting. Like, you can take it as many times as you like. So going back to the question about, how to live from the heart space, I think we've touched on a lot of things. One way to cheat is as follows. Okay, if you go to the heart space, there's some things which will just take you there. One is animals. If you hang out with animals, and I don't mean wild, ferocious animals, but, smaller animals that you don't get scared of. Even if you're going for a walk and you see a rabbit, right? Just, you feel something different. It puts you in a different space. Just seeing the rabbit. Or, of course, any number of the animals we can have, living with us. Those animals, they don't encourage us to get too mental. They're always taking us towards feeling and being, which is very much what we want. So animals and babies too, same thing. With a baby, you naturally go to the heart. And so that's wonderful. It instantly takes you there. So hang out with animals, hang out with babies, hang out with nature. Nature is yet another thing. And I keep thinking beingness, what is a good example of that? Nature. It gets you out of the head, puts you in touch with beingness. And you got to spend time in nature. It's not like 5 minutes. I think you got to just, even if it's your backyard, 20 minutes in the evening staring at the sky. Okay. That changes your consciousness. So looking at the stars, looking at the setting sun, the expansiveness of the sky, the colors, right? How the colors change as the sun sets. It's just totally going to put you in a heart space. Finally, I would say, get your life simplified and cleaned up so that, there's not always some big upheaval going on. So these patterns I see in people, there's some people like 10 years back, 20 years back, there was some upheaval. And then pretty much at any point you sample what's going on, there's some big thing going on. So there's constant upheaval. And then it typically means there's some aspect of that person that's unconsciously drawing these kinds of things. It's almost like saying they like it, even though they probably would say they don't like it at all. But they're not realizing that they are stirring the pot and something is going on. So I would say stop it. Stop stirring the pot. Get your life to be simple, dull, and boring. I'm a big proponent of a dull and boring life. I think it's highly underrated. I think that's a great life. Dull and boring. Dull and boring, of course, to somebody who just casually looks at this person's life, but actually internally rich. Because it just looks dull and boring because somebody says, what did you do last weekend? You're like, nothing special. I went for a walk, I had a nice meal, or whatever. There's other people who are like having exciting things happening all the time. Compared to that, it's dull and boring. But internally, it's so rich that you don't need anything to make it all fun and exciting. There's a quality of being where the nothing is pretty good. The nothing feels pretty good. So that's what I would recommend. Simplify your life. And then all the other things I talked about. So there's a whole host of things we went through. Let me pause there.
Suresh,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to add in something there when I was actually grinning when you said simplify your life.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people have experienced this or not. So the past 1 year or so, with every meditation and stuff or whatever practice, I feel a lot of past life stuff coming up. And they're coming up in huge chunks. Now, it's very hard to explain how I know it's past life. Like, just an intuition. Perhaps I'm creating a drama as well. It could be anything. But I'm just working with maybe it's just an intuitive thing. So these huge blocks which seem to be arising from past life experiences.
Yeah. And
sometimes they're obviously very pleasant. Sometimes they're not. And sometimes it also brings across people like I feel I've known them from a different lifetime. And very heavy emotions there.
Yeah.
Like I said, both good, bad, or whatever it is. But, it just like you said, keep your life simplified. Some of these things are just happening and they're just huge chunks of emotion.
Right.
And I have no idea what to do with them. Like, they're just coming in. I don't know if it's, maybe it's obviously resolving itself. So they're somewhere dropping. So I literally kind of have like a, some sort of a, like a release every few days, but something else pops up and it's happening very, very quickly. Is that normal as well? And they all seem to be something I'm carrying from some other lifetime, not specifically this lifetime. Like even coming across people and maybe in most cases, they've been somebody very dear to me. So there's a whole package of emotions that, pop up there.
Right.
That's just what I wanted to.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, invariably when we start embarking on deeper and deeper on a spiritual journey, we are like icebergs. Like we there's a small piece of us that is visible above the water, and there's a lot underneath the water which is not visible. And this underneath the water is our totality of who we are, and that includes a lot from previous lifetimes actually. In today's culture, we have a tendency to look at our early childhood and we're like, try to pin everything down to these early childhood experiences and this family you grew up in. Actually, that's just one small piece of the whole thing. There's a lot going further back. So the reason I mention that is for all of us, I would say, when we start going deeper into meditation and deeper into ourselves, we are saying, okay, I want to clean up whatever's there. And sure enough, all this stuff starts coming up. And sometimes we may be aware of it, like you are, that this is definitely a past lifetime. Sometimes we actually, it's just some feeling, like I wake up today and I feel like in a bad mood. I'm just in a bad mood. There's nothing going on that I can say, oh, this is why I'm in a bad mood. I'm just in a bad mood. It's like these kinds of things, or sometimes behaviors or patterns of thinking, we can't say why I am like that, but that's how I'm thinking and behaving. And a lot of these actually can be traced back to previous lifetimes. And this is inner stuff, but then even outer stuff, like you're saying, the people we bump into, the jobs we end up in, and so on and so forth, they are, they're not random. There is something going on, whether it's past life or not, whether we are aware of it or not. And so I would say, to respond to your question, it's going on with everybody to some degree. Sometimes it's accelerated, like seems like right now for you that's you're on an accelerated growth program. Looks like you made the mistake of signing up for some such program. But just kidding. Things pop up more frequently because your awareness is now saying, I want to clean it up. I want to tackle it. Now, the downside is you may feel so much coming up on an emotional level that it's like, oh man, what's going to happen this week? it's like a lot. Now, this you can take refuge in two things. One is you can get good at letting go. Okay, get better and better at letting go. So when things come up, you efficiently process the emotion and let it go, right? And the other one is that you can use this wisdom, this understanding, this knowing that there's a bigger picture, that these things are coming up not randomly, and there is some order. I may not know the exact order, but there is some order to this, insanity or madness going on. So that can help.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not always easy. I know when things are happening a lot, you feel like you need a break. Yeah.
But thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great questions and thoughts there. I've got a couple more questions here that were sent to me, and then also a question in the chat. But I think right now it's time for something a lot more fun. It's time for the lighter side. So, and then we'll come back to the other topics. Okay. This time, the topic is Chuck Norris. So some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, Chuck Norris jokes. Some of you may be wondering who this is. It's, Chuck Norris is a movie star. He's also a martial artist. You've probably seen him in some movie. Way back, I remember a movie with Bruce Lee. I don't remember the name of the movie, but there's any number of movies, and then TV, many TV series which he's like the guy who goes and beats up everybody. So that's Chuck Norris. So there's a lot of really funny one-liners floating around about him. So here we go. If you've been with the AGP for a long time, I bring up Chuck Norris time to time. So Chuck, it's time for Chuck Norris again. So here we go. And I would recommend putting on your seatbelt because some of these are so funny, you're going to fall off your chair. So there you have it. You have the warning. Okay. Oh, let me actually unmute folks so we can hear the who fell off. Okay. So go ahead and unmute yourself unless you're in a super noisy environment. Something might have popped up on your screen saying unmute. So suggest unmuting. Okay. All right, here we go. If you want a list of Chuck Norris's enemies, just check the extinct species list.
That's not.
Okay. When the boogeyman goes to sleep every night, he checks his closet for Chuck Norris. When Chuck Norris goes to a restaurant, the waiter tips him. Chuck Norris is the reason why Waldo is hiding. Chuck Norris has a diary. It's called the Guinness Book of World Records. Chuck Norris can drown a fish. Again, Chuck Norris is legendary, as you can see. Chuck Norris's tears can cure cancer. Too bad he has never cried. Chuck Norris does not sleep. He waits. Chuck Norris does not use spell check. If he happens to misspell a word, Oxford will change the spelling. Champions are the breakfast of Chuck Norris. The dark is afraid of Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris makes onions cry.
Jesus.
When Chuck Norris writes, he makes paper bleed. Chuck Norris can strangle you with a cordless phone. Just think of that. The only time Chuck Norris was ever wrong was when he thought he had made a mistake. Outer space exists because it's afraid to be on the same planet as Chuck Norris. When Chuck Norris does a push-up, he's pushing the earth down. In Pamplona, Spain, the people may be running from the bulls, but the bulls are running from Chuck Norris. The Great Wall of China was originally created to keep Chuck Norris out. It didn't work. When Chuck Norris was born, the only person who cried was the doctor. Never slap Chuck Norris. When Chuck Norris does division, there are no remainders. It takes Chuck Norris only 20 minutes to watch 60 minutes. I just love these. Chuck Norris can sneeze with his eyes open. Before he forgot a gift for Chuck Norris, Santa Claus was real. Chuck Norris's cowboy boots are made from real cowboys.
Oh my God.
The flu gets a Chuck Norris shot every year. Chuck Norris didn't call the wrong number. You answered the wrong phone. Chuck Norris was once bitten by a poisonous snake. After a week of excruciating pain, the snake died. Just think of that. When Alexander Graham Bell first invented the telephone, he noticed he had 3 missed calls from Chuck Norris. Think about that. A rainbow happens every time Chuck Norris roundhouse kicks Richard Simmons.
Oh my God.
Chuck Norris doesn't pay taxes. Taxes pay Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris once had an arm wrestling contest with Superman. I'm not going to say who won, but the loser had to wear his underwear on the outside for the rest of his life. The day after Chuck Norris was born, he drove his mother home. He wanted her to get some rest. When Chuck Norris went to Burger King and ordered a Big Mac, they made it for him perfectly. Chuck Norris is able to start a fire using an extinguisher.
Oh my God.
When police officers approach Chuck Norris, they say, "We have the right to remain silent." When Chuck Norris lifts weights, the weights get in shape. Bigfoot is still hiding because he once saw Chuck Norris walking in the mountains.
So,
Chuck Norris doesn't negotiate with terrorists. The terrorists negotiate with Chuck Norris. And then finally, do you know why there are so many Chuck Norris jokes but not many Bruce Lee ones? Because Bruce Lee is no joke.
What?
As a fan of Bruce Lee, I had to put that one in the end. That's
And for anybody looking to become like Chuck Norris, actually, he's selling a supplement brand. You should check it out.
There you go. He's selling a bunch of things. I know he's still very active, but maybe in a different industry. So there you have it. Chuck Norris jokes. Seems like you guys were able to handle it pretty well. This is hopefully it won't make you stay up at night. All right. So that's on the lighter side. A couple of announcements. So let's see. Next AGP. So, actually, December you would expect we would be the last AGP, but because of my travels, and then when I came back and felt sick, we kind of got off the regular sequence. So in fact, this is November AGP happening in December. So the December AGP is still going to happen at some point in December. Now, because December end is holidays, Christmas, and so forth, it's going to be interesting scheduling it. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Maybe Monday, December 18th is a possibility. So 2 weeks from today. But we'll confirm that. The Just Be study group for this month is already over because it is the first Saturday of this month. So watch out for the next one in January. Okay, let me mute everybody in case there's a background noise. Okay. I'm going to go to tackle another question that I got, but let me see if there's anything that's popped up for anybody here that you want to ask live.
So one, quick comment I realized these humor, like pieces that we do in AGP, initially I didn't actually connect with it, but eventually it made a lot of sense because uh, that can be an integral part of everyone's life. It's uh, mostly about work, doing your duties and etc. etc. But humor really, helps things lighten up, and it's so obvious to everyone. But it took a while for me to realize, like, I don't have to go back to school to be, like, so happy and everything. So day to day, that really helps.
Yeah, we can get too serious with anything, including spirituality. I mean, it's hardly, meant to be serious in long faces. That's really not what it's about. So this is one piece to remind us of not taking ourselves too seriously. And and some of the jokes, of course, are far from funny. But I like to think that they too are calibrated. The higher your consciousness, the more you understand the jokes. They are obviously ridiculous, but somewhere in there, it requires you to let go of some belief, some structure to get the joke. If you don't let it go, you won't get the joke.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just thought I'll share a little bit what came up in the last Just Be study group session we had.
Yeah.
So we were just sharing a little bit about how maybe a landlord or a boss, when they when there is an out of nowhere, we kind of feel surprised and our vibrations are contracted. Uh, I think we felt like, okay, we have an integration opportunity, but that comes around a little later. In the beginning, it's just a little jarring and
Right.
this thing. So I thought I'll just bring that up. And if I know we've discussed this in previous maybe AGPs and so on, but I thought I'll bring it up because it's kind of relevant for most people, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things I would say. I would encourage people to share, real life stuff going on, because it helps us, all of us, talk about it and look at, these are potential opportunities for integration, growth. And, one of the keys is seeing things from multiple perspectives. If you can see things from different perspectives, which is what will happen if you bring it up, then something shifts, actually. Something shifts in that process. And whatever was going on, which was previously like, it was like, choking me, like it had me by my throat. It felt like that. And now the grip loosens when you have that shift. So that situation still needs to be dealt with, obviously, but it doesn't feel like it's choking me. And so that's a pretty positive thing, the shift in consciousness. And then, of course, you also have more creative ideas on how to deal with that situation. Usually, creativity, we don't realize, is very hampered if we are feeling very tight and constricted. We can't come up with creative ideas. We feel like, there's only one choice. Too bad. I just have to do this, and you do whatever. But in fact, if you are more expansive, you will find that there's many options, many creative options, and then you might make a more interesting choice now that you have more interesting options. So thank you for sharing that. And I think, this is, of course, another reason why check out the Just Be study group, because the AGP is not the only place we're talking about these things. The study group is a great place where there is good discussion about all these things. So, good. So I'm going to now tackle a couple of the questions. I'm going to combine two questions into one because they're kind of related. So let me just read the questions. First question is, it's from, I got it some time back, but finally getting around to it. Could you speak about developing sensitivity in meditation? Are sensitivity and expansion closely related in meditation? So this is about sensitivity. And then the next question is about expansion. Can we explore the experience of expansion in a more detailed way? And if there is anything that supports it growing and becoming and being more natural with it. Sometimes it feels like there is an invisible block. I also notice there's a correlation between my level of presence in relationship to my body and my direct experience of expansion. So these two questions I'm going to tackle together. Sensitivity and expansion. And there's plenty to say about these things, so we'll just we'll tackle this, and then if there's anything that pops up, we can tackle that. I noticed there's also a question on the chat window, so we'll see if we can do that as well. Okay. So could you speak about developing sensitivity? Are sensitivity and expansion closely related? This is kind of an interesting thing that happens. So as we go to subtler levels of our being, it requires a certain sensitivity. To get even more subtle requires even more sensitivity to pick up those subtle things. And so in a way, as you meditate over the years, you do get more sensitive because you're developing that ability to pick up on that subtle stuff. So sensitivity develops in meditation, and you could say the reverse too. If you have that sensitivity, you can go deeper in meditation until at some point you'll reach the limit of what you can get to based on how sensitive you are. And so this is all actually just fine. This is just how it works. This sensitivity keeps on developing, and we keep going deeper, and we keep getting more sensitive so we can go further. So this, we are able to pick up on the subtleties, and when you pick up on subtleties, what is preventing you from going even further, you're able to actually feel that, sense that. And the beauty is you bring awareness, you bring light, and that, whatever that thing is that construct is now dissolved. And that enables you to go further. So you expand your consciousness. So there's further and further expansion, further and further subtlety, more and more sensitivity. This is the general pattern. Now, there's sadly a downside about all this happening. And this is where you'll feel the contrast. So what happens is we develop this sensitivity, and it's like, okay, great, because in beautiful, subtle states of consciousness, this sensitivity opens up greater beauty, and subtle truths are revealed. Good stuff. But then afterwards, you're now in the middle of day-to-day life, right? And, as we were talking about earlier, your heart is more open, and you're also got this sensitivity which you developed. And so now there's going to be so many things going on in life which are always going on, but we are more sensitive to that too. So we're going to feel every little thing. And that doesn't feel so good. So we feel like, oh, when I was deep in meditation, that is all good stuff. But now, the variety of things going on, whether it's physical noises or emotional stuff going on, or somebody said something, it's like not a big deal, but boy, if you're sensitive, you feel that so much. It's like, you can't just ignore it. It kind of really hurts. So now it's like, wait a minute, this sensitivity which was helping me progress in the spiritual journey, it's making my human existence rougher. That's why I said it's kind of a interesting. It's just interesting how it is. So what happens is, once we know this, at least we have some sense of what's going on. So that's number one, just to know that this kind of thing happens. Now there's ways to handle the sensitivity in day-to-day life. And there's lots of things we could talk about, but I'm going to jump ahead to the ultimate thing because I'd rather make sure that that's conveyed, and then we can talk about all the other stuff. The ultimate thing is that as your consciousness truly expands, your sense of self is also changing, right? It's going from a somebody who's really here, to more and more amorphous, more and more vapor-like. It's like that sense of self as a me is shifting. So that's important. Now let's come back to sensitivity. So you're develop this sensitivity, and then something is happening in day-to-day life. Somebody bangs a door or somebody screams at you, whatever it is. The sensitivity will really, you will feel the impact of that. But then the sense of self has expanded and to quite an extent dissolved, So there is that sensitivity when the whatever is felt, it's like there's an infinite being now who's feeling that rather than a small guy. So if a small guy is highly sensitive, boy, everything hurts and you don't like it. But if there's an infinite being, you can still be sensitive and feel it and feel all kinds of things, but you have this capacity that it's like the whole universe is feeling that through you, not just you, a little guy. So because of that, it's all okay. Because keep in mind, infinity, right? This infinite consciousness, it's feeling everything that everybody is feeling. At the same time, it's feeling it. It can handle it. It's infinity. It can handle it. But so are you and I. So when we become more and more, we're embodying this infinite consciousness, we are picking up all these sensory inputs. We're feeling it, but we're okay. The infinite consciousness behind it can handle it. So, of course, all this develops with time, but different things develop, at different pace. So we don't turn into infinite beings, overnight, typically. So in the interim, the sensitivity is going on developing, and we're still dealing with life, and we still feel like I'm mostly a regular guy. I'm just, trying to evolve. So then you feel all these feelings. It's really pretty intense. And that intensity, there's a positive way to channel that. It's not like, oh, too bad. That intensity you feel should be used to propel you further into higher consciousness, rather than saying, oh, poor me, here I am. Use that intensity to propel you, to push you, to motivate you to freedom. Okay. So to expand your consciousness further and further and further. So that's the big answer. Now there's various kinds of things you could do to handle it, but I'm gonna mostly stick to that in terms of the sensitivity component. And now to get into the expansion component, but maybe let me just pause here. If somebody wants to add something or ask something about what I just said.
Suresh, one of the things, these two questions about sensitivity and expansion, I have been looking at it is about my relationship as a finite self to the infinity, which can be through awe or devotion.
Yes.
So that is what has been coming up. Maybe you can elaborate. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. When we connect, if you say I'm a finite being, I'm connecting with infinity, and I'm going to be orienting myself towards infinity with love, devotion, that too actually is really saying the same thing in different words. It develops a sensitivity. Oftentimes it's a little more emotional sensitivity, which is at the forefront of that. The sensitivity which I talked about earlier is really multiple fold. There is an energetic sensitivity, there's an emotional sensitivity, there's mental sensitivity, and there's also physical sensitivity, meaning sensitivity to sensory physical sense inputs, like bright light. Some people would be very sensitive to bright light. Some people are like, it's okay. So, you can be sensitive to physical inputs. So all those sensitivities, I was lumping it all together previously. But what you're talking about, I'm kind of now emphasizing that is much more heart-based and an emotional sensitivity, which typically we are engaging with and developing and using for expansion. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. There's, like I've said, there's many approaches, and they have their validity, they have their value, and whatever you feel drawn to. And in a way, I feel light has a universal application. So even when somebody is devotionally oriented, if you bring light to that devotion, it purifies that devotion. So it takes it from a very finite kind of devotion to subtler and higher devotion, to pure devotion. So the light can also help there. So, but it's all good. It's all good. So that, so basically what I'm saying is, that is a lot more emotional aspect to that sensitivity which develops with devotion and love. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's talk about expansion. So that was the other question about, can we explore expansion in a little more detailed way? So usually when I talk about expansion, I am talking about expansion of consciousness. And that's really the key. That's really the key to truly evolving to higher states and recognizing the truth. Now, you can, but also the expansion of consciousness has energetic component to it. So as you expand your consciousness, the energetic aspect of you is also expanding. And sometimes we may feel the energetic component as it's expanding, you may feel like there's certain places you run into where it runs into a block. So you are really tracking that energetic component at that point. It feels like, oh, okay. And there could be something there that is an impediment, right? So the energy body is running into something that needs to be resolved, that needs to be attended to, that you simply need to bring awareness to. It may not be something, scary or nasty. It's just something that needs attention. And so when you do that, it dissolves it and the expansion continues. The interesting thing about consciousness, which I came to realize after a very long time, is that while consciousness has its sort of reflection in these various components like energetic, emotional, physical, it itself is beyond all that. So what that means is consciousness is not constrained by some of these things. So let's say you have an energetic block or an emotional block, for example, or a physical block. Maybe, like let's say you have a headache, okay, or a stomachache or something that's obviously uncomfortable, and you are trying to get into higher consciousness. It can feel like an impediment. It's like, this thing is hurting. I can't go higher. It can feel like that. And similarly emotional, similarly energetic. They can feel like impediments. But the good news is consciousness cannot be held down by anything. It is beyond all these things. It's beyond all these things. This is why, this is like really great news. No matter what limitations we have, because we all have all kinds of limitations, right? You pick up any level of our being, there's a decent chance there's some kind of limitation there. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The consciousness, the power of consciousness is so much that if you're able to tap into it, it will override everything. It will override everything. This is so important. initially these impediments really slow us down because we feel like, oh, too bad, I've got this, let's say some unresolved trauma. It feels like, oh man, if I, it's really slowing me down. If I didn't have it, I would be probably enlightened by now. So we feel like that. And that's why it slows us down, because we buy into that. But a day comes when you don't buy into any story of limitation. You may still have limitations, but you don't buy into these things. The consciousness that you truly are is infinite. You can step into that. And so in spite of any limitation, we can get there. We can get to truth, we can get to higher consciousness, we can get to realization. We don't have to be in perfect physical health, perfect emotional health, perfect energetic health. No, perfect mental health. Oh boy, who has that? None of these are required. Thank goodness. So we can actually transcend all these things and have expansion of consciousness. And that's really what we're shooting for. That's really what we're shooting for, that expansion. So that is always available. Okay, that's a strong statement. That consciousness is always available. It cannot be not available to us, no matter what's going on. Because it is so fundamental and intrinsic to who we are. It's really built into the very depths of who we are. It's our essence. You can never ever take out that essence from anybody. So we can use that to our advantage. Anytime we feel like I'm running into any kind of blockage to further expansion, you can do certain practical things. Certainly if there's emotional stuff, try to do emotional release. If there's physical stuff, obviously try to get healthier, whatever it takes. If there's mental stuff, you do whatever you need to do. Energetic stuff, do energetic release techniques, and so on. So you do these things from a practical perspective. But wherever you end up, you even if you still feel like there's something left over, you don't have to feel like that's going to stop me. And nothing can stop you. Absolutely nothing. That's the beauty of the power of consciousness, and then the light which represents that consciousness in the manifest reality. That has infinite power. So when we engage with these things, you are essentially tapping into this infinite power. And boy, it can take you anywhere. And that's eventually what it does take. That's what it does take for us to escape this gravity of all the limitations that we all have. We don't have to feel bad about it. It's nothing. We just, we pick up all this junk along the way. It's no big deal. So, that's what I have to say about that. Let me pause for any comments or follow-up questions or anything. People have fallen off their chairs. Either that or fallen asleep. All right. Okay, if we're done with those topics, if there's no follow-up on that.
Suresh,
Yeah, go ahead, Chitra.
So even if we get to this, the highest state of consciousness or whatever, our ultimate truth, but we still come back and face this finite reality, but we'll be facing it from a different space, right?
That's right. That's right. We don't disappear from the physical reality. We're still there. We're still very much back, and we still have to deal with all the stuff, good and bad. Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes me realize something, that you usually say in all the videos. When you choose light, life becomes increasingly joyful. So when you're in this expanded state, even though you have troubles, is that how you feel? Like you feel you feel light, you feel joyful no matter what?
Yes. So definitely. Yeah. The more expanded state you're in, the more you feel very cool about it, whatever's going on. It's like somebody says, okay, the plane is going to crash in 30 seconds. It's like, okay, great. It's like terrible news. In one way, it's very terrible. On the other hand, you feel like, oh, okay, fine. That, you don't feel like full of fear, anxiety, all those things. And that's just one extreme example. But if the more you're truly in an expansive state, the more you are sort of impervious. You're immune to being dragged into states of consciousness which we normally think of as negative, difficult emotions, feeling stuck. But it's not like we're out of touch with that. So that you will feel you can have some of those emotions too, but it doesn't override. It doesn't become the predominant one. So I don't want to make it feel like there's some sort of strange blissful state that you never feel sad or disappointed or angry or annoyed or jealous or all these things which we feel are like, oh, that's not good. You may feel that in a very passing way, but it's not able to grab you. But it still passes through your consciousness. So the predominant state is you will still be in this open, expansive state, but something like that may pass through.
Yep, totally makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If we're done with those topics, I'd like to quickly respond to this one question in the chat, and then we can wrap it up. So the question is, how do we teach the younger generation, young adults, about living from the heart space instead of approaching life the usual way? Well, the most important thing is to be a good role model. I think that's I would say the most important part of it. Living that way, demonstrating that way, rather than talking a lot about it. So the more young adults see, whether it's their teachers or parents or peers living like that, then living from the heart space, the more they would be, it's on their radar, and they're more likely to, emulate that. So that's the most important thing. The other things we could do is, much more subtler things, maybe casually in conversation, bringing these types of topics, or watching movies which show that without saying a whole lot. You just share that movie experience. Things like that. Now, on a large scale, that's a different question. I'm talking about it much more on a personal level. A large scale, what do we do with all the young adults on the planet? Boy, that's a tougher thing. People we don't necessarily directly interact with. I think for such things, I would say we need more influencers who, whether it's musician or whoever, these kinds of people who young adults look up to, whether consciously or unconsciously. The more such people can show they are living from the heart, that has a positive influence. And luckily there are, such people, whether it's celebrity authors or celebrity cooks or celebrity rock stars. There are people who are showing that to some degree. They may not talk about it in spiritual terms, but they are showing heart, connection, compassion. And in fact, I often see interviews where I'm very impressed with some celebrity type person. They're talking about, it used to be the celebrities are so self-involved. They just talk about me, me, me. But I'm seeing quite a few celebrities who are talking about something much bigger. And so or talking about personal growth. So I'm pretty impressed. So there's definitely see more of that. So those are some thoughts. Anybody else have anything to add?
Just to add to that, there are celebrity gurus these days like Sadhguru and Sri Sri, where people follow them, and movie stars and everybody follows them too. I believe that at least rudimentarily helps people. Okay, they are doing it, so I should probably go try it out, and something expands in them. So that's also happening. I'm seeing that.
Yeah. Right. Any other thoughts on that or any other topic as we start wrapping up here? Okay, great. We've gone on a little bit past 9 o'clock here, but good discussion, great comments and questions and sharings. I think each of these AGPs I feel is kind of like a retreat on its own. So hopefully you found it useful. Certainly I've enjoyed spending this time with you. And you have the AGP WhatsApp group. Remember, you can use that to share any other insights or questions you may have. That's a good venue to continue the conversation. Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Boundless love and light to all of you. Take care. Bye now.